That's control. That's selfishness. That's entitlement. This woman is a monster.
There's something about this story that kind of violates our safety in a way of feeling like people were nice and then realizing that they were totally behaving like psychopaths and were doing something so far, taking it so far as Ryan Reynolds did.
Oh, hey, Ryan Reynolds.
Hi.
Hey. Ryan Reynolds, how's it going?
Great. Why? What have you heard?
And it's not enough. You don't even get to come to the premiere. You're not allowed in the premiere. Fine, but he goes in the basement when I show up. I mean, that's not authorship. That's not autonomy. That's control. That's selfishness. That's entitlement. This woman is a monster.
And what it sounds like is that she's not interested in being a part of a team. She just wants to own it all. And that's fine. If that is your method of working, then do that. But you have to create your own projects. You have to put yourself in that position that you are in charge, not take it from somebody else.
That over the last 30 days, she has lost 397,000 subscribers, okay? That is not a small amount. If you similarly go over to Ryan Reynolds, he's lost almost the same amount, 1,000 more than her, 398,000 subscribers.
That I wanted to be a part of the storytelling and that I wanted to be a part of the narrative, whether that be in the writing, in the costume design, in creating the character. And sometimes I had directors or producers or writers who would welcome that and invite that once they saw that I was able to offer that. And sometimes I would have people who really resented that because they were like, we just hired you to be an actor.
She claims he sexual harassed her, and then by the time they premiered the movie, they weren't even speaking to each other. She made him stay in the basement, and Ryan Reynolds turned on him too. And then she claimed that he unleashed a bad PR campaign against her.
It's it's SNL 50-year anniversary, and or Saturday night, whatever. Ryan Reynolds stands up, and she's like, "How's it going?" He's like, "Good. Why? What have you heard?" And it was all, ha, 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 ha.
Well, yeah, that's because that's what you did. You knowingly admitted that's what you do. They want an actress, they hire an actress, they pay you to be an actress. That's your job. But then you do exactly what Justin's accusing you of.
Blake Lively, a name that once shimmered with the golden glow of Hollywood's elite. For years, she wasn't just a celebrity, she was an icon, synonymous with effortless glamour, a seemingly fairy tale romance with Ryan Reynolds, and a relatable charm that captivated millions. She was the actress whose posters adorned bedroom walls, the celebrity whose every move was chronicled and celebrated. But somewhere, almost imperceptibly at first, the carefully crafted facade began to crack. The unwavering adoration that had been her constant companion began to waver, then erode. The enthusiastic cheers slowly morphed into a chorus of critical whispers, and finally, into outright jeers. Now, Blake Lively finds herself navigating a reality that would have been unthinkable just months ago, the chilling landscape of public animosity. Hollywood's darling, once perched atop the pedestal of fame, has been abruptly and perhaps irrevocably dethroned. But what seismic shift could trigger such a dramatic and devastating reversal of fortune? What sequence of events unfolded to transform America's sweetheart into, as some corners of the internet now declare, Hollywood's most reviled figure? The answer, as we delve deeper, reveals a complex and compelling story of unchecked control, alleged manipulation, and a truly spectacular, almost Shakespearean fall from grace that seemingly no one in the dazzling world of Hollywood saw coming.
There's a version of this where Justin Baldoni was just Michael Scott in The Office, where he's just saying inappropriate things, but not with any ill will. But Blake Lively, much more different culturally, more about the power and thinking that this is about the feminist Me Too movement. And how dare you do this?
You're basically saying you're a liar. You misrepresent who you are. Maybe that has something to do with why you're now being sued for promissory fraud, because you're admitting that you go in there.
The initial tremor that signaled the impending earthquake in Blake Lively's carefully constructed world can be pinpointed to a seemingly routine piece of media coverage, a cover story in the influential industry publication, The Hollywood Reporter. February 22nd, a date now etched in the annals of celebrity downfalls. What was likely intended as a fairly standard, albeit high-profile magazine profile instead morphed into something akin to a meticulously documented public indictment. The article didn't simply chronicle Blake Lively's career, it dissected her public persona and, more crucially, peeled back the layers to expose what many are now characterizing as a deeply concerning pattern of behavior, particularly and most damningly on the set of her highly anticipated film, It Ends With Us. Rumors and hushed whispers of on-set tensions and creative clashes had been vaguely circulating within industry circles for weeks, but this meticulously researched and powerfully written article dragged those shadowy rumors into the harsh glare of public scrutiny. Accusations, stark and unsettling, began to surface in the mainstream. Claims of her aggressively attempting to seize absolute control over virtually every aspect of the production, allegedly overriding the director's creative vision, reportedly demanding significant and often disruptive script alterations, and behaving, in the words of multiple anonymous sources, as if she were Steven Spielberg himself, rather than simply the lead actress contracted for the project. This damning portrayal, meticulously detailed within the pages of The Hollywood Reporter, painted a stark and unflattering picture of unchecked entitlement, a palpable sense of arrogance, and a disregard for collaborative filmmaking that profoundly shocked not just fans, but seasoned Hollywood professionals. Suddenly, the meticulously crafted and carefully projected image of the down-to-earth, approachable star began to fracture, revealing a potentially far more complex and less palatable reality underneath. The Hollywood Reporter cover landed not just as an article, but as a carefully aimed and expertly detonated bomb, irrevocably shattering Blake Lively's previously impenetrable and meticulously maintained public image. But the immediate fallout, the cascading consequences, were even more extensive and devastating than even the most cynical industry observers could have initially predicted.
She wrested his movie away from him and decided to try to hurt him with petty, made-up, out-of-context complaints when he pushed back even in the mildest way.
Now, Blake, allegedly, according to these sources, and there's a lot of stuff in here, whole piece is worth a read. Now, Blake has shared with friends, allegedly, that she considers this a fight that's bigger than her.
The digital realm, that ever-present barometer of public sentiment, reacted with an almost instantaneous and visceral intensity. Social media platforms, once Blake's carefully curated and controlled playground for projecting her desired image, abruptly transformed into a chaotic and unforgiving battleground. The raw data, the cold, hard numbers, tell a stark and undeniable story of reputational collapse. The metrics don't lie, and in this case, they paint a brutal and unflinching portrait of a career in potential freefall. Almost with the speed and ferocity of a digital avalanche, Blake Lively's carefully cultivated follower count began to hemorrhage at an alarming rate. We're not talking about a minor dip or a negligible fluctuation, we're talking about a staggering and unprecedented exodus. In what felt like a digital blink of an eye measured in mere months, she shed hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of once loyal followers. Figures that would induce a state of near panic within even the most seasoned and unflappable celebrity public relations teams. Specifically, since the initial rumblings of discontent in September, a verified count of over 864,000 followers have vanished from her digital sphere. Furthermore, in a single 30-day period, nearly another 400,000 individuals demonstrably opted to click the dreaded unfollow button, signaling a profound and deeply concerning shift in public perception. And the digital contagion of negativity wasn't confined solely to Blake herself. Even her seemingly impervious and Teflon-coated husband, Ryan Reynolds, whose public image is usually bulletproof, proved to be surprisingly vulnerable to the reputational fallout, experiencing almost the same staggering level of digital attrition. Meanwhile, in a bizarre and almost darkly comedic twist of fate, the very man at the epicenter of the controversy, Justin Baldoni, witnessed his own follower count experience a meteoric and inversely proportional surge. It was a digital earthquake of seismic proportions, a crystal clear and unequivocally undeniable signal that the vast tide of public opinion had irrevocably turned decisively against Blake Lively. The comment sections across various platforms erupted in a volcanic outpouring of raw emotion, punctuated by scathing accusations and brutal pronouncements. Monster, control freak, liar, manipulative tyrant. These were just a fraction of the vitriolic descriptors hurled at her with relentless abandon. The often fickle and unpredictable online mob had convened, deliberated, and rendered their collective verdict, and that verdict, in no uncertain terms, was damning. And the repercussions extended far beyond mere online vitriol. Hollywood itself, that notoriously pragmatic and image-conscious machine, began to subtly and then not so subtly distance itself.
Serious sexual harassment during the filming of It Ends With Us, and now they're making light of it on SNL's 50th reunion show. So tonally, it does seem off, and I can imagine people just wanting to stay away from it. You're going to catch
Blake Lively is caught in old footage, revealing that yes, her secret plan is to always take control of the movies and lie to the directors.
Hollywood, that dazzling yet ruthlessly pragmatic metropolis of dreams, operates under a distinct set of unspoken rules and priorities. Loyalty, in its truest and most altruistic sense, is often a scarce commodity, and in this high-stakes game, meticulously cultivated reputation reigns supreme, often eclipsing even talent itself. And in the rapidly shifting sands of Hollywood perception, Blake Lively suddenly and with alarming speed transitioned from a coveted asset to a potentially crippling liability. When the Hollywood Reporter article detonated, its impact reverberated far beyond the casual observer and the celebrity gossip columns. Industry insiders, studio executives responsible for multi-million-dollar investments, powerful producers who control the levers of greenlighting projects, they all registered the seismic shift in public sentiment and immediately began to recalculate their positions. Hollywood, at its core, is a business driven by power dynamics and financial calculations. And when an individual, regardless of past achievements or perceived star power, becomes demonstrably more trouble than they are demonstrably worth, the industry's response is typically swift and merciless. They get dropped expeditiously. Projects that were once considered slam-dunk greenlights, guaranteed box office successes, suddenly became fraught with risk and uncertainty, transforming into precarious ventures. Hushed whispers of urgent project reevaluations, potential production delays, and even the drastic measure of shelving projects entirely began to circulate through the power corridors of studios and production companies. Why executives began to openly question, would any sane studio risk committing tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to an actress who was now widely perceived as a nightmare to work with? Someone with a documented history of hijacking productions and a propensity for throwing tantrums when her demands weren't immediately met? Even those carefully constructed and strategically maintained celebrity friendships, those seemingly unbreakable alliances that form the intricate social fabric of Hollywood, began to fray and dissolve under the immense pressure. Taylor Swift, famously and publicly close to Blake for years, maintained a conspicuous and deafening silence throughout the escalating controversy. In the nuanced and often coded language of Hollywood power plays, silence in such circumstances often speaks volumes, signaling a calculated distancing and a strategic retreat from potentially damaging associations. The unspoken yet crystal clear message circulating within the industry was unmistakable. Blake Lively was rapidly becoming professionally radioactive, and anyone who remained closely associated with her risked catching potentially career-ending shrapnel from her rapidly imploding reputation. But to truly understand the depth and breadth of this industry-wide recoil, we need to delve deeper than the headlines and surface-level analysis. We must trace the roots of this spectacular downfall back to the alleged epicenter of the crisis, the tumultuous and controversy-laden set of It Ends With Us. To fully comprehend the profound depth of the current backlash engulfing Blake Lively, we must meticulously rewind the narrative and delve into the reported atmosphere of tension, conflict, and alleged chaos that permeated the behind-the-scenes environment of the It Ends With Us film production. This wasn't simply a matter of typical creative differences or the usual minor disagreements that can occasionally arise on any film set. This was, according to a growing chorus of sources both on and off the record, a full-blown and protracted power struggle for control of the entire project. Blake Lively, despite her official designations as merely the lead actress and an executive producer, roles that traditionally carry significant creative input but not ultimate directorial authority, reportedly conducted herself as if she were the de facto owner of the entire cinematic endeavor. The accusations leveled against her, corroborated by numerous anonymous accounts, are stark, unsettling, and paint a picture of a set environment dominated by intimidation and unilateral decision-making. Specific and deeply troubling claims began to circulate widely, allegations of her repeatedly and forcefully pushing for script changes that directly contradicted the established vision of the writer and director, consistently overriding directorial decisions on crucial aspects of filming, and in essence transforming the entire multi-million-dollar production into what many crew members began to privately refer to as the Blake Lively Show. This wasn't her movie, but she still forced script changes, overrode the director's decisions, and completely took over the project like some wannabe Steven Spielberg. One anonymous insider reportedly confided, echoing a sentiment that became increasingly prevalent within industry circles. According to multiple reports, crew members and even some co-stars allegedly felt palpably intimidated, walking on eggshells and demonstrably afraid to voice dissent or offer alternative perspectives for fear of severe career repercussions should they inadvertently cross the increasingly powerful and seemingly unyielding Blake Lively. The film set, which should have been a collaborative and creatively fertile space for artistic collaboration, reportedly devolved into a tense and stifling pressure cooker environment characterized by an atmosphere of pervasive control and unchecked intimidation, all allegedly meticulously orchestrated and relentlessly enforced by the film's supposed leading lady. And while these accounts of creative and professional overreach are deeply concerning in themselves, the unfolding narrative soon took an even darker and more disturbing turn as accusations of something far more serious and potentially career-ending began to surface, adding another layer of toxic complexity to this already explosive situation.
There's a lot of comments that she puts in here that you're just like, why would you want to take over someone's movie? The outfits in this end are so out of touch. No, we don't want to watch bullies like Blake.
They did this publicity stunt last night where they went on SNL and Ryan Reynolds made this silly joke, this really silly joke.
I want to go through some of these pieces because hear me out. Here it is. So from the outset, the feud's been framed as the newest chapter in Hollywood's ongoing fight for gender equality because I don't think she even realizes what she's admitting. Sometimes they'd let me and sometimes they wouldn't. And that then she goes further and says, I would just lie to them in the audition process and make them think I'm just an actress to do what they want.
Adding an even more volatile and morally ambiguous layer of complexity and outright controversy to this already incendiary situation were the deeply serious sexual harassment claims initially and publicly leveled by Blake Lively against her It Ends With Us co-star Justin Baldoni. In the immediate aftermath of these allegations, and given the prevailing cultural climate of heightened sensitivity surrounding workplace harassment, Blake Lively was initially, and perhaps predictably, positioned and perceived as the wronged party, the victim in a power imbalance scenario. This initial framing garnered her a wave of immediate public sympathy, widespread support within certain segments of the industry, and a sense of righteous indignation directed towards Baldoni. However, as the narrative began to unravel and counter-evidence began to emerge, public perception underwent a dramatic and almost whiplash-inducing shift. Justin Baldoni, rather than meekly accepting the role of the accused and silently weathering the storm of public condemnation, chose to actively and strategically fight back against what he perceived as demonstrably false and maliciously motivated allegations. Crucially, and with devastating effectiveness, he began to pull out the receipts, meticulously and strategically releasing leaked text messages, internal communications, and carefully selected legal documents that began to paint a dramatically different and far less flattering picture of Blake Lively and her motivations. Suddenly, the carefully constructed and publicly disseminated narrative of Blake as the vulnerable victim began to demonstrably crumble under the weight of this newly presented evidence. Instead of a sympathetic figure bravely speaking truth to power, a counter-narrative began to rapidly coalesce and gain traction, one that portrayed Blake Lively not as a victim of harassment, but as a calculating and potentially manipulative individual engaging in a consciously crafted and strategically deployed attempt to weaponize the powerful and essential #MeToo movement for distinctly personal and professionally self-serving gain. Legal analysts and media commentators swiftly and rigorously dissected Blake's initial lawsuit, publicly highlighting a series of glaring inconsistencies, logical contradictions, and strategically placed yet demonstrably misleading omissions. Perhaps even more damaging to her already tarnished public image were the credible allegations that she had actively attempted to selectively erase or significantly alter key text message exchanges from her legal submissions, only to be definitively and publicly exposed by Baldoni's legal team, who had meticulously retained comprehensive records of all communications. The collective public began to increasingly perceive the harassment claims not as a genuine and heartfelt cry for workplace justice and accountability, but rather as a cynically calculated and ruthlessly executed move in a larger, more complex, and far less noble power play. A strategic maneuver designed to discredit, control, and ultimately silence Justin Baldoni and anyone else who dared to challenge her increasingly apparent dominance on the It Ends With Us set. The fundamental question being asked in the court of public opinion underwent a seismic transformation. It shifted from a presumptive "was Blake Lively genuinely harassed?" to a far more critical and accusatory "was Blake Lively in fact demonstrably manipulative?" And the emerging answer, as viewed through the lens of increasingly damning evidence and rapidly shifting public sentiment, was becoming overwhelmingly and devastatingly clear. But amidst the swirling vortex of chaos, accusations, and rapidly disintegrating reputations, one unexpected individual emerged from the wreckage seemingly unscathed, and perhaps even significantly strengthened by the very storm that threatened to consume him. Justin Baldoni, the unintentional hero of this unfolding Hollywood drama.
One likely to be remembered as the spark that ignited the next chapter of the Me Too movement. On the other side is a billionaire producer, a novice filmmaker, director, and a small Baha'i employee, Baha'i, sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I think it's Baha'i employees who believe they are simply living up to the moral code of their faith. And imagine if Justin had just known this, if this clip had gone viral before to avoid this whole mess. I'm just the entitlement of her that she thinks this is okay and like proudly displaying as we're women, so we can just lie and cheat and steal our way into control these big movies. Exactly. I think that's so telling how confident she is to just say, I have no qualms lying to the director, taking control of their movie, pulling the rug from them. Like, oh my God.
While Blake Lively's carefully constructed world visibly and dramatically imploded around her, Justin Baldoni, in a twist of ironic fate that few could have predicted, became the almost accidental yet undeniably compelling hero of this unfolding Hollywood drama. The stark and almost cartoonishly contrasting nature of their respective reactions to the escalating crisis couldn't have been more pronounced or more revealing. Blake, seemingly consumed by a sense of spiraling panic and a desperate need to regain control of a narrative that was rapidly escaping her grasp, lashed out publicly, engaged in aggressive and often counterproductive public relations maneuvers, and frantically attempted to reassert dominance over the unfolding story, only to witness her carefully laid plans slip further and further from her increasingly desperate grasp. Baldoni, in stark contrast to this frantic activity, maintained a remarkably composed, almost unnervingly detached demeanor throughout the entire ordeal. He consciously and strategically chose not to engage in the messy and often demeaning arena of online mudslinging. He demonstrably refrained from granting any explosive tell-all interviews to tabloid media outlets, and he instead opted for a strategy of dignified silence, choosing to strategically allow the mounting evidence, the leaked documents, and the increasingly vocal public opinion to speak eloquently and devastatingly on his behalf. And the evidence, as overwhelmingly interpreted by the increasingly engaged and critical public, was resoundingly and unequivocally on his side. While Blake's follower count plummeted into the digital abyss, Baldoni's experienced a dramatic and sustained surge, fueled by a wave of public sympathy and a growing sense of admiration for his perceived resilience and integrity. While Blake was relentlessly vilified across social media platforms and in online comment sections, Baldoni was increasingly lauded as a symbol of the unfairly attacked, the victim of a cynical Hollywood power play who possessed the courage and quiet strength to effectively fight back against a seemingly insurmountable tide of negativity. Even his seemingly nonchalant and almost defiantly unbothered social media presence, the now iconic images of him casually surfing in the sun-drenched waves of Hawaii, while Blake's professional reputation metaphorically burned to the ground back in Hollywood, only served to further solidify his carefully cultivated image as the calm, collected, and inherently reasonable party amidst this increasingly messy and emotionally charged Hollywood divorce of reputations. Blake's calculated and ultimately self-destructive attempt to strategically damage Justin Baldoni's career and professional standing had spectacularly and ironically backfired, inadvertently propelling Baldoni into the unexpected role of the sympathetic protagonist and perhaps even more significantly demonstrably elevating his standing and perceived market value within the notoriously fickle and opportunistic landscape of Hollywood itself. But as the dust begins to settle on this unfolding scandal, and as the stark contrast between Blake Lively's apparent downfall and Justin Baldoni's unexpected ascendance become increasingly clear, a crucial question remains. Hanging heavy in the Hollywood air, what does all of this ultimately mean for the long-term career trajectory of Blake Lively?
So I found that incredibly telling. Hidden in a little footnote, her protection that, well, you know, I was told they were lawfully obtained. Yikes. Big yikes.
His statistics over the last 30 days, he has received 206, or you could almost say 207,000 additional followers.
Even if Justin was too huggy or whatever the heck, or said she was sexy, none of this warrants this. And you still have to atone for what you did.
So, in the cold light of day and amidst the lingering smoke of this Hollywood bonfire of vanities, where exactly does Blake Lively go from here? The stark and increasingly undeniable truth is that her immediate and long-term future within the notoriously unforgiving confines of the entertainment industry is looking decidedly uncertain and perhaps even, to some observers, irreparably damaged. She is currently navigating a full-blown public relations disaster of truly epic proportions, her once pristine public image lying in tatters, and her professional reputation now indelibly stained with the accusations of manipulative behavior, on-set tyranny, and a demonstrable willingness to seemingly prioritize personal control over collaborative filmmaking. Her demonstrably ill-conceived and ultimately self-sabotaging attempts to exert absolute control over the narrative surrounding "It Ends With Us," to cynically manipulate public perception and to strategically play the victim card in a situation where many now perceive her as the aggressor, have all spectacularly and definitively backfired, leaving her isolated, exposed, and facing a level of professional and public scrutiny that few celebrities ever endure, let alone successfully overcome. Hollywood, a town that ostensibly values creativity and artistic expression, but in reality often prioritizes power, control, and above all else cold hard profitability, has seemingly and decisively turned its back on one of its former darlings for what is now widely perceived as a blatant and egregious abuse of that very power. Is this then the definitive and irreversible end of Blake Lively's once promising reign as a bona fide Hollywood A-list headliner? Can she, through some masterful act of public relations alchemy or a genuine and demonstrable course correction, somehow manage to recover from this potentially career-obliterating crisis? Or is she destined to become a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the precarious nature of fame and the swift and merciless consequences of perceived hubris and unchecked ambition in the cutthroat world of Hollywood? Only the relentless and unforgiving passage of time will ultimately reveal the definitive answer to these weighty and industry-altering questions. But one stark and unavoidable truth remains unequivocally clear amidst the swirling chaos and uncertainty. This unprecedented scandal has undeniably ripped away the carefully constructed layers of Blake Lively's public persona, revealing a far more complex and arguably far less appealing side of her character and professional conduct than most casual observers, and perhaps even many industry insiders, had ever previously suspected. The carefully crafted fairy tale is demonstrably over. The central question now, as Hollywood and the wider world watch with bated breath, is what, if anything, will ultimately rise from the ashes of this spectacular and very public self-immolation? Subscribe now for ongoing updates and in-depth analysis as this captivating and career-defining Hollywood drama continues to relentlessly unfold, promising further twists, turns, and potentially earth-shattering revelations in the weeks and months to come.